Hello, students of the future, students of the present. This is just a quick sort of mini class today. Quick logistics. I'm going to finish discussing the Judith Weston book. If anyone wants to borrow this and look at it, this is, I consider, one of my favorite books out there about directing actors. And then I'm going to give a quick preview of the film that we're going to watch next Tuesday. So first of all, let's see, big picture reminders. Uh, that we are watching Selma on February 19th. That's in the evening. Please write that on your calendar. And also, if you cannot be there, let me know in advance. We are also you're also invited to come to Pretty Little Room. It is in Crosstown Theater, March 6th and 7th. If you can't be there, then let me know and I'll invite you to a dress rehearsal. Reminder again, yeah, next week, both of our classes are in the Barrett Basement Screening Room 034. So do not come here. Someone will invariably make the mistake of coming here. Don't let it be you. Okay. So yeah, so today I'm gonna do so this whole book is essentially about how to do those 7 things instead of doing result direction. This is a lot of words and great, great, great content and examples, but I have been trying over the past like 4 lectures to summarize all of it as quick as possible. The first day we talked about verbs, which was a real big one. And then we talked about some of these, facts, subtext, imagery, emotional event. And today I'm going to try to get through those last 4. You guys have already finished directing, so this is not for your current project. You can reflect back on what which of these you did or did not do for those of you who will be directing this weekend. Think about that. So these last 4, starting with obstacles. So obstacles are what is keeping the character from their objective. So we think about obstacles and objective together. They both start with OB, so you can think about that. An actor always needs to know what they're trying to do and what is keeping them from doing it. If they don't have any obstacles, they can just get their objective in scene 1, and then there's no rest of the movie, right? So actors sort of characters need both of those. The characters sort of have those, the actors play those, if that makes any sense. So here is a quote from the book, and she says, "Sometimes actors forget that an obstacle is a good thing, not a bad thing. Obstacles strengthen the objective. We know this from real life. If you want something, the problems you must solve to get it make your determination stronger. Actors can get stuck in a comfort zone and make a choice that enables them not to engage, not to be affected by the other actor. For instance, the verb to ignore. Both we'll talk about that in a minute. But if your verb is to ignore, sometimes that just disconnects you from everybody else. But both characters must be affected by each other, even if they struggle to preserve their composure and keep the other guy from knowing they're affected. There has to be something at stake. So if the verb that the actor is playing is to ignore the other person, that's fine. That could be a really clear objective, a verb to play. I'm trying to ignore you. But the obstacle is maybe every word the person says annoys them. So I'm trying to ignore you, but I can't quite ignore you because everything you say pisses me off. Do you know what I mean? That will read on someone's face and be more interesting than just playing the objective to ignore. Obstacles can help you figure out staging. Those of you who have been working on staging know that sometimes you're like, I don't know what they should do. What should they be doing? Sometimes the obstacles are like physical things. So here's an example from the book. Uh, Obstacle can be useful, for instance, in a scene where a character wants to throw a punch at another person, but because it's a business meeting, may take out his aggression by playing with his pen. So what is the character doing in the scene? Oh, he's like aggressively playing with his pen because he can't hit that person in the face. Obstacles can also be invented via little rules. Like an actor may not, or an actor is not allowed to sit down until he feels he has won against the other actor. So then standing is a kind of, example of an obstacle. Or once he moves towards her, he can't step back. So they're kind of like little rules or games that you can play with your actors. And then actors, sometimes the obstacle is a part of the physical life. Here are some examples. We'll get into this one a little bit later, but a stuck refrigerator door. You can ask the actor to play as if the refrigerator door is stuck, so they have like more drama in the opening of the door. Or you can preset the arm of the coat inside out, so the actor has to struggle to get into the coat. It can make a exit look more dramatic or interesting because there's a physical obstacle. Yeah, and this next one is physical life. So the physical life of a scene. Physical life is actually the word that Weston uses instead of blocking or staging. Blocking or staging have this kind of like outside vibe, like the director gives you your blocking, gives you your staging. The physical life makes it more the reality of the character itself. So this quote, this long quote here, starts with the idea the physical is emotional. And Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, says they can put the clothes on you, but then you've got to wear them. So the actor has the physical life of the clothing. This is an example of two examples of physical life. Physical choices trigger internal transformation. Nicole Kidman spoke to the New York Times about the importance of the leather jacket her character wore in Destroyer. Kidman refused to take it off, even at home, or let them wash it. She said that wearing that jacket was, quote, part of the character's depression. We were talking about method acting before. This is a little bit of method acting, right? Amy Ryan made the backstory choice that Helene, her Gone Baby Gone character, was a victim of child abuse. This led her to a posture and a gait for Helene, walking and standing with her head low, quote, because she's expecting another hit. So that's also an example of using created facts. So that's like it's a fact that's not necessarily from the script, but the character created as a fact that affects her sort of physical choice. Yeah, so physical life, yeah, physical life. Oh, and then this is the one about the refrigerator door. So you can use physical life instead of enforcing an attitude or emotion. You can use physical life to sort of solve problems or to help an actor when they're perhaps not acting as well as you wish they were. So I heard a story of a director of a major motion picture who was having trouble with a direction to an actor. The actor kept falling into a vaguely seductive manner, even though the scene had nothing to do with seduction. The director felt like for this actor, seducing was an intention he tended to revert to without thinking, a default. The director asked him to play the scene less seductively, but the actor didn't change. This happens a lot. If you do like less adjective, they sometimes don't change at all. They don't even necessarily know that they're doing it. So the director, she repeated the direction, still no change. The performance was stalled out. The director couldn't get what she wanted out of this guy. The scene took place in a kitchen, and finally the director said, why don't you go to the refrigerator and look for a snack during the conversation? And let's let the refrigerator door be a little stuck. So as soon as this actor had a physical task, the search for a snack, it's a very specific thing that you're doing, and had a little bit of an obstacle, the door, the actor was freed from his default setting, and the scene played simply and naturally. As it happened, the story was about the difficulties families can have communicating during holiday gatherings, so the actor's struggle with the stuck fridge was revelatory. So it's symbolic, right? It's a kind of symbolic action to it. Okay, does this make sense in terms of physical life? This trick of giving actors something to do when they're not acting the way that you want them to is a very good trick. It often works better than trying to like nitpick what they're doing or give them a line reading. Just give them something to do. Look through your bag while you're doing this. Oh, you need a pen. Try to find a pen. Give them something physical to do. And then the lines sometimes become secondary and then they get better. Hard to explain. Okay. All right, this next one is as if. We talked a little bit about this. This is making an adjustment for an actor using a metaphor or simile. If you take my acting class, we talk a lot about the magic if. Magic if is one of those concepts that Stanislavski developed, this Russian innovator into acting, where we sort of use our natural imaginative capacity to, imagine the magic if of aliens landing on the planet. What would you be like? So this as if is sort of triggering that part of the actor of how you create fictional circumstances. And because all of the circumstances are fictional, giving them a replacement fictional circumstance to imagine can sometimes really work. Do you know what I mean? So these are some quotes from the book. Use an as if instead of instructing actors to produce a mood. If you wanted a quote chilly atmosphere in a family dinner scene, you might ask the actors to play the scene as if the first person who makes a mistake in table manners will be sentenced to death. Right? You could say, hey, make sure you have really good table manners, or everyone be very precise about how you use your silverware. Or you could say, look, it's as if you're going to be sentenced to death if you use the wrong fork. It just gets the actor's imagination going a little bit more. You can also use as if as a way to try to get them to quote unquote not overact. So as ifs help you avoid result direction. If a family is discussing funeral arrangements and the scene is getting overwrought, instead of directing them to take it down or a little less drama, a little less acting, the director can suggest that they are talking about this emotional topic as if they're considering what to have for dinner. The reason this might work is that it happens in real life. I've seen it. Sometimes people do talk about life or death things with very casual tones of voice. Okay, so that's as if, physical life, obstacles, Any questions on these obstacles as if in physical life? Yeah.
Um, you spoke about giving like the task to do. What's an alternative you recommend for people that are like voice acting or art?
I mean, some of this you could combine the as if and the physical task. Do this as if you're driving, you know? How might you talk? Because I, as an actor, if I'm speaking into a mic, could be like, so what do you think about grandma's cancer? You know, you could give them an emotional life to imagine while doing it. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Physical life, things that they can do with just looking too, like do this, as like as if you're looking through a photo book, like things that are more about visual stimulation might do it. But yeah, that's a good question. I'll think more about that. Anything else on these? Okay, then the last one is a really, really big one, and I hope you guys were able to do some of this on your shoot last night, which is questions, using questions. Questions are the bread and butter of a director, also kind of a professor. I do this a lot also here. The three kind of main kinds of questions. Open-ended questions are particularly good in table work. What do you think is going on in the scene? Sometimes that feels vulnerable to do because you're like, aren't I supposed to be the one in charge who knows what's going on in the scene? But I will tell you, people learn by doing and talking, and you will get much better results from your actors if you ask them to say what's going on in the scene rather than if you sit down and be like, okay, so what's going on in the scene is this. Do you know what I mean? So you can just, that's a really good question for table work or rehearsal. And then this one might help with adjustments. And this can, so a leading question is when you have an answer that you want them to say and you're trying to see if they're going to say it. Often they do. Often they have the same impulse, intuition, instinct that you do. So, do you think he's telling the truth when he says he didn't do it? You might have the answer in your head because you know the given circumstances of the script that he's absolutely lying. But having them say it helps them sort of understand it more deeply. And they're like, oh no, yes, he's not telling the truth. He's lying. Okay, so then the actor might be like, without even talking to you about it, might just from having said, oh, he's lying on this line. The next time he performs it, he might do it differently and ideally better. Um, and then the third kind are questions as responses to their questions. Sometimes actors hate this, but they'll ask you a question, and especially if you do not know. If they ask you a question and your first thought is, I have no fucking idea, or I don't care. Sometimes they ask you things and you're like, that's the least of my worries. I have 17 other things that I'm juggling right now. If they ask you a question and you do not know and you do not care, it's fine to say, I don't know. It's less fine to say, I don't care, because obviously it cares enough, they care enough to ask you. So you can say, oh, I don't know. But a really great thing to say is like, oh, I hadn't thought, you don't even have to say I hadn't thought of that. You could say, oh, good question. What do you think? And then, first of all, you'll probably have more of an opinion about it once they have told you what they think. And secondly, it might be something that they have discovered or that they feel really strongly about. And so often they'll ask you a question and they will have already thought of an answer or a workaround. And you might as well use their sort of innate knowledge of the field of acting as well as their like practice knowledge of their character. So questions as responses to questions are great. A couple quotes from the book. Once the technique of asking questions becomes second nature, you'll feel more comfortable using these questions when giving direction. You'll be able to listen more than you talk when you're with actors, which is one of the goals. And then this other quote says, use questions as a directing tool. See chapter 4. That's the longer chapter about questions. Just be ready to back off if you get a signal from actors that your questions are beginning intrusive or becoming intrusive. My favorite use of questions is to pose one and then say, you don't have to tell me the answer. When actors or characters have secrets, that's particularly powerful. Yeah, so if the content is delicate, like death or sexual assault or violence, you also might be like, you don't say like, has this ever happened to you? But like, is there a time from your childhood that this could resonate with? Sometimes people will do that. You don't have to tell me, just think about it. Is there a time in your life when you have been betrayed? It's a betrayal scene. Don't tell me. That really doesn't matter for you to know or not know. But think about, like, imagine or take yourself to some of that time in your life. Actors are generally trained to figure out some of their own boundaries about their own imaginative life, but actors do borrow from their own life. That's partially what we do. Okay, questions about questions? Nope. All right. Cool. Then I'm going to transition over to this little introduction to the documentary that we're going to see in class next Tuesday, called Hitchcock Truffaut. So that's fine. We're gonna watch this movie called Hitchcock Truffaut. That's the poster of it. This is Hitchcock. We are familiar with his face by now. And this is Truffaut. Has anyone heard of Truffaut so far in your life? Great. Okay, this is your little intro to him. We're gonna watch it Tuesday in Barrett 034. This film was made in 2015. It's directed by this guy Kent Jones. And it's based on this book, Hitchcock
Came out
Truffaut,
in
and there's a
1967.
very tiny excerpt of it for you to read in class, or for you to read also prior to, or actually it's fine to read it after Tuesday, but it's prior to your discussion post. Essentially, this French director Truffaut interviewed Hitchcock about every single one of the films that he had made up to that point, the year when the book came out.
1967.
They're very in-depth interviews about each film. It's interesting because Truffaut does not speak good English and Hitchcock does not speak good French. So there was a French translator, a French English translator, a woman who's like talking in the background the whole time. They actually filmed the interviews. So you can watch the interviews themselves on YouTube. The entire book essentially is on YouTube as the interviews between the two of them. And if you're a film nerd, it's fun to watch. Um, and the book has been a longtime favorite of filmmakers ever since it came out. And then in 2015, this guy, Kent Jones, who's a filmmaker and also a film critic, made a short documentary sort of as a summary of these, like, 20 hours of interviews. So we're going to watch that. And then there's a tiny reading that's the chapter about rope, which is actually only like 4 pages, but the chapter of that interview about rope. Kent Jones, like Truffaut, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, was both basically started out as a critic and then turned into a filmmaker, which is an interesting trajectory. Starting out like criticizing and writing about and analyzing other people's films, and then deciding to be brave and bold enough to make your own. So a little bit about, oh yeah, and that's a scene from the interviews when they did them. I need to know what year this is. I'll add it in on the video when I get home. It's black and white, so 60s, I think. I think early 60s.
1962, yes.
So this is Truffaut. This is his like serious face. This is one, this class is about directing and directors. So I do want you to know some of the directors that are sort of famous and important throughout history. He's really important in French cinema history. He lived from 32 to 84, pretty short life. He ended up dying around the same time that Hitchcock did, even though Hitchcock was born in the 1800s. So I think he had cancer. He died, unfortunately, too early. Brief summary is that he was a French critic and then turned filmmaker. He also did some acting, but I think he would like his acting to be in parentheses and his filmmaker and critic to be the kind of important parts of his life. He was a student and friend of André Bazin. Has anyone heard of André Bazin? Have you all taken media studies media theory? Did he come up in theory class? Maybe he's one of the progenitors with the auteur theory. And he was an editor of Cahiers du Cinéma, this famous French journal. He was a proponent of auteur theory and this idea of the director as the sort of main author of a film. Yeah, became a director sort of later on in his life. And he was a big contributor to the French New Wave. So if you've heard this term, French New Wave, we call it the Nouvelle Vague. He was a big contributor he made some films in that genre and he theorized that particular genre. Biographically, he had a very rough childhood, which he later made movies about. He was a teen cinephile, so he started a cinema society. That's how he met Bazin at age 16. He started hanging out with his older French critic. He really loved US cinema at the time, including Hitchcock, which is why he eventually did that interview. Important part of his life, he was in the army and he deserted the army. His film 400 Blows is often considered one of the initiating films of the Nouvelle Vague. The Nouvelle Vague, if you haven't heard about it in other classes, is considered a sort of rejection of traditional film structures. So a lot of things that you might be learning from me in screenwriting, they did not do a lot of those in Nouvelle Vague. Another big thing about Nouvelle Vague is they have long takes, which is a theme for the first unit of the semester. Long, extended takes, deep focus, so you could see what's happening in the front and the background, which was like contrary to what a lot of was happening with cinematic shoots, and had plots with unusual relationships. think it's 1918. I think he was born in 1918. That makes more sense. He died at 40. He was born in 1918. He died in 1958 at 40, Bazin. Important figure in French history. He grew up in occupied France, right? So France was occupied by the Nazis. This is
1940 to 1944.
He watched a lot of films. He really valued the sort of gritty realism of documentaries, of Italian neorealism, and the Nouvelle Vague over Hollywood movies. He urged respect for the audience and the idea of allowing the audience to interpret ambiguity rather than having to spoon feed them the ends or things that make sense. And he and Truffaut became friends. Truffaut was a big critic of mainstream French film. He thought a lot of it was schlock. He made semi-autobiographical films of his own, which of course is the genre that Bazin really liked, this kind of truth-telling. Yeah, and he was basically saved from a prison sentence by Bazin in particular, who said, "You can't court-martial my friend for deserting the army. He needs to go edit this fancy French film journal called Cahiers du Cinéma." Fun fact, the guy, I think I said this, the guy who made the documentary Hitchcock Truffaut also worked for Cahiers du Cinéma. So that's the two of them. Truffaut was also very good friends with this other important figure in Nouvelle Vague, French New Wave cinema, which is Jean-Luc Godard. Have people heard of Jean-Luc Godard? Probably the most famous guy from that era. And he lived a very long time. That is his true, he lived to be like 92. His first film was called The Bout de Souffle, or Breathless, the great film, go watch it. He may have been one of the progenitors of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Lots of good films out of Godard, check him out. Random dance sequences sometimes, but not like big budget. This is Truffaut's first film, La 400 coups, 400 blows. That's actor playing a young version of him, the 400 blows of his childhood. This is a really famous later film by him, Jules et Jim, which is a film about a romantic menage a trois or triad trio. That's the three of them there. Edgy, fun, sexy film. They were friends, and then they had a falling out about politics. Godard wanted films to have a sort of more strong, powerful Marxist or just like left-wing ideology, and Truffaut was a little bit more like the magic of cinema. They were both left-wing politics, but had a little bit of a falling out over the politics themselves. Okay. Oh, this is one of my favorite. So they were both political. Godard may have been going farther sort of left in certain ways, but Truffaut's interpretation was also political. And this is one of my favorite ideas of his. I don't think it comes up in Hitchcock Truffaut, but I just want to tell it to you because I think it's a good thing to think about and to understand about him also while we're watching that video. He is sort of known for this quote or this idea: "There's no such thing as an anti-war film." And his concept is that even if the heart of the film is a criticism of war, the 2 hours that you spend watching it and the way that people on the screen become heroes still valorizes and heroicizes war. So I think this is an interesting and quite debatable concept. I think you could write a paper saying either of the two sides of this, or you could say anti-war films are only possible when shot on a small, but like anti-war, films are only possible if they're a documentary, but I think it's an interesting concept to start with, because even though I think it's certainly about war, it's also just about what films do in general. Like, I think about Euphoria, right? Euphoria glamorizes drug use. They are telling you that drug use is bad and you will perhaps die or go crazy. But man, Zendaya looks good when she's high as shit, So is there such thing as an anti-drug abuse TV show? Or does the mere value of putting it on a screen, spending all this money and artistic talent to make it look beautiful, does that not in some way uplift it in ways that's politically dangerous? So yeah, it's a great question, and it makes you think about some examples. Full Metal Jacket was absolutely supposed to, we talked about this in the last class, it was absolutely supposed to be an anti-war film. Saving Private Ryan was absolutely supposed to be an anti-war film. The Hurt Locker, all of these different wars, different contexts, different budgets, and Hurt Locker was notoriously like a woman director. Like, men have been directing war films forever. Does a woman get to direct one war film without people critiquing her and being like, why did you make that pro-war film? She's like, it's all about trauma. But yeah, that is the end of my mini lecture, and I will see you in the Barrett Library next Tuesday. at class time. If you have any questions or things come up with your shoots, you guys in particular, please let me know. And yeah, thanks.